Yo, testing, testing. I want to make sure everyone can hear me.
I can hear you.
I'm asking the people in the comments if they can hear.
In the chat,
Yep.
it doesn't even look like we're live yet.
Yeah, it's probably a delay.
Okay.
Hey guys, I got a special guest here, actual Justice Warrior, and we're gonna look at this individual right here, Mr. BadEmpanada, who made a video response to Sean, and we're gonna briefly look at some of the things because he does a lot of straw man. It's like 46 minutes, and he's also known as a big troll. So I'm not surprised, though. I might be a small YouTuber and he probably would ignore me, but at the same time, he's known to like troll people. So I'm gonna, after like talking about the video, I might post a link for the Discord. We might also talk about the what's happening in New York with Andrew Cuomo. So anyway, for context, Sean made a video like around July 20th on Cal Kalinske and Krista Bell on, them simping for the.
On Cuber. I made it on Cuber. The Cubirds.
Oh, yeah, the Castro simps. Which is odd because I'm making a video on Cuba and the arguments about high literacy rates and healthcare. I'm like, that's not really. First of all, Cuba, of course, had the best healthcare system before the communist regime.
It's even better than that. Cuba, before under Batista, they had a better healthcare system than France.
Yeah,
So they've actually fallen in world standing ever since the communist revolution, but they had a huge head start.
yeah. Not only that, like I have a biography on Batista, and like Batista isn't as like American backed dictator and people make him out to be, because like you also got the revolution of 1932, 33, in which like Batista became like he overthrew the a dictatorship. Well, not per se dictatorship. It was like a corrupt president that the U.S. tried to overthrow, and then the vice president of that president took over, and then Batista overthrew him. And he like Batista when he was strong man, basically Cuba became a puppet state where like they have a president, but the president was basically the puppet of the dictator, which it was Batista. And Batista made a lot of policies like restricting American businesses in coming to Cuba, which these tankies will ignore. And he made a lot of liberal policies, and to the point that even socialists would make like they would like support him. I got this book right here. It's called
Fuck. Lame. Nobody likes reading.
Valencia Batista, From Revolutionary to Strongman. I recommend. It's a biography, and I recommend you got anybody who is interested in history to read. But I'm aware of BadEmpanada. He is known for strawmanning people. He tries to, for instance, like he made a video he made on was it Knowing Better. He tries to compare him to white nationalists and what was the news anchor Tucker Carlson. Even though Knowing Better is probably the most left wing person on the internet.
I don't know about on the internet, but in like the history circles, he's pretty left wing.
Hold on, let me screen share. You can see the screen. Hold on.
All
Or join the live stream. You can see the screen.
right, all right. I'll join it.
And hold on, let me put the playback speed a little fast. Though it might make his Australian accent even more annoying. Let's just start the video.
Chris Dreyer is asking, is this live? Is it in fact live? I don't know, Chris Dreyer.
Is it live? Hold on. I'll check. More annoying. It's checked and it's live. That's weird.
No, it's alive. That's just something people ask on the internet.
And someone who says, called me a fascist, even though that person knows, yeah, fascism is capitalism and decay. I'm like, you know nothing about fascism. Like, go Google yellow socialism. Alright, let's begin.
Justice Warrior. He says that Carl Kalinske and Crystal Ball simp for communist Cuba.
Hold on, let me make sure that the people can hear the I think they should hear desktop mic. I think it should work.
Man, that sounds terrible. How could anyone ever simp for communist Cuba? I'm sure he's got some amazing arguments about this that are going to prove everything they say wrong and BTFO them with facts and logic, as you know your average conservative YouTuber tends to do in a very thorough fashion with tons of facts and logic. So let's check that out.
And salutations, everybody. Today I want to talk about Cuba because, as you may have heard, there's been a massive protest movement across the country. These are the first significant protests in decades because Cuba is a repressive communist regime that doesn't allow protests.
Oh, so the reason that these are the first protests in decades is because it's a repressive communist regime, you know, but that doesn't make much sense because protests happen literally everywhere, regardless.
Can you pause it
wait,
right
hold
here?
on, that's a straw man. That's a straw man right there.
Just pause it right here. He's like, oh, people. He thinks that I stated that people only protest communist regimes. Like, just think about that point. Like, do you think that was the point that I was making in the video, or the point I was making was that the Cuban government clamped down really hard the last time, so it's the first major protest in decades in Cuba?
Yeah, which is not really true because in the 1980s there was a bunch of protests in which oppositions, like people in the opposition, would inject themselves with AIDS. And I know in the 1990s, in 1991, there was the Valera Project, or the Valera Project, in which they were trying to make like a glasnost for Cuba. And even like, and keep in mind, it was a petition to change the constitution to allow free speech, freedom of expression. And what happened was, it got around.
Decades ago.
Yeah, but keep in mind, however, like in 2003, members of because it was a petition around like I think 15. I might get the number wrong. 15,000 people signed. More than 15,000 people signed that petition. And in 2003, while America was distracting the Iraq War, the Castro regime committed like a mass purge, like similar to the Night of the Long Knives. Well, sorta. They didn't go out and killing people. They just put people in jail. Like anyone who signed that petition was put in jail.
Okay. What I was saying is that it's the first major protest in decades, and like, yeah, you named ones that were decades ago. People are saying that there's something wrong with my mic. Can you hear me clearly, Zorro? Like, or is there something off?
Hold on. Let me see. I can adjust the audio.
Well, I don't know if they're saying it's low, but yeah. Anyway, so this guy's like making the argument that I said or implied in any way, shape, or form that people only protest in Cuba, in communist countries. Like, that's not what I said. So already we're strawmanning in the beginning.
Oh yeah, which he's good at, right? Let me go and continue on. He's
repressive.
I just want to point out one thing before we go forward. The only way that we can have an argument related to Cuba is if we ignore the fact that hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have fled Cuba for the United States of America.
Yes.
Like, that's the only way.
Yeah, and which is causing a brain drain in Cuba. Like, I'll admit, like, it's another thing that these tankies would argue is that they try to, I think even Cal Kalinske argues this, is there's more people protesting for the government rather than against it. Which I'm not denying that there's a large amount of Cubans that support the government, but keep in mind that's around like more like than like 60 years or 70 years of indoctrination, which is a big tragedy and a big failure in the U.S. part. I mean, of course.
All right, they're saying there's an echo from my audio. Do you see me like reverbing off of your mic or something else going on?
Hold on.
You know what might be happening? You might be playing the audio from the Discord from two sources, so it's causing a little bit of a reverb. Or do you have the stream quietly in the background?
The stream quiet. Okay, I'm
like the YouTube link. Do you have that playing through your OBS?
No, I do not have the YouTube link, or I do not. I'm not playing the YouTube video. That's weird.
All right.
I think that's a problem. I have a similar problem too. Hold on. I think it's because I'm using desktop audio. I don't know. Oh my goodness. Alright, guys. Is he still echoing? Say something, Sean.
Something, Sean. Am I echoing? Something. Something, something. Am I echoing something, something? You should check on OBS if you see two audio sources when I speak. Like, there's like audio lines that you could look at.
Yeah, it's audio lines. It's in screenshot. I think you should see it. There's desktop audio, and then there's mic audio.
Okay.
I don't see another.
You don't see another line? Then it should be fine. Like, let's just roll with it.
Hold on. It sounds the same.
Let's just roll with it.
Hold on. Going back.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I could switch to the Blue Yeti.
I don't think it's the microphone. Hold on. Let me see. Keep in mind this is my first time. Let me see it. Let me hear the video. Hold on.
Now somebody's saying the audio isn't echoing, but I just sound weird. Maybe that's because I usually use the compression settings with this microphone.
It's fine. It's saying it's fine.
Yeah, I would just roll with it. I don't know,
I think this is the part where he's going to start making the most, biggest, tanky talking point that has been, you will see.
There's other reasons why there might have been, why there might not have been many.
Saying it's super loud. Wait, hold on. I think I know what they're talking about. Let me lower it down.
Speaking inside of a drum, I don't even, they could be trolling though. That's the problem. I haven't set this microphone up for a live yet, so maybe it wasn't good for me to test it.
Saying they want to switch the mic, but I don't think it's the mic.
I'll switch to the Yeti right quick. Just give me a sec.
Okay, they're saying not trolling. I think it's the okay, here's the thing. Am I echoing, guys? Am I echoing? Or is it just Sean? Yeah, I think it's the input. Alright, do I sound fine? Hold on, let me lower mine a bit too. Wait, hold on. Say that again?
I said, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Alright, I've switched to the Blue Yeti.
Yeah. Okay, guys, you sound fine. Okay, no echo. People are saying it sounds fine. Alright, let's continue.
Protests in Cuba, maybe people didn't want to protest. I get it's difficult to understand as an American who hates protests there all the time, especially with how common they are, that maybe people in Cuba are a lot happier than your completely zero knowledge brain thinks. It's possible, but not going to look into it at all. Just has his pre-made conclusion up and ready for this country that he literally
the Cuban people are much happier.
So we're already got a good start.
That's why they're fleeing Cuba.
Oh, here's the thing though. Here's the interesting thing I would say about BadEmpanada. He's from Australia, but he lives in Argentina. right? I am Puerto Rican. I was born in Puerto Rico, and Sean is half Puerto Rican. Hence why I had the title. And he's pretty much white-splaining us about what Cuba is, right? I have like family members that have been to Cuba. I have people who like are from Cuba. And I've been to Cuba somewhat because on a cruise ship, I went on a cruise ship once, and it was around a hurricane, so we were sort of forced into sailing very, very close to Havana, and I was able to see the cities and the sky, like the buildings in Havana. So, yeah, he's basically like. I like to. I keep in mind. It may sound like an SJW talking point, but he's an SJW. I like to make the same arguments back at them. Like basically, you got. Hold on. He's basically like one of those. Like he reminds me of those evangelicals that would go to Africa and try to convert the people in Uganda to Christianity. Except of Africa's Argentina, except for evangelical Christianity. He's spreading Marxism. But anyway, let's continue the.
But the people in Cuba are really happy. This is why millions of Americans every year swim to Cuba.
Which
I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, and to be honest, like if you look, I might talk more in depth later about this, but if you understand the history of Cuba, like. And American relations, like we're basically like people like to argue that we're like rivals, and which is not per se true. Like historically, we've been like the most basically like the Latino brother sort of relationship. I mean, Jose Marti was raised in New York, and the same thing with Puerto Rico too. Like the Puerto Rican flag was designed in, believe it or not, in New York. The movement to free Cuba from Spain was started in New York, right? Jose Marti wrote his poetries and his political thesis in New York, the United States. And a lot of these people, independence movements in Cuba against the Spanish Empire initially were based in Florida and in New York. I mean, look at, and the same thing with Puerto Rico too. You got the Yaco revolt, that's where you got the Puerto Rican flag is from. They came.
I saw that in the movie West Side Story.
These people would be the same people who call Marti a Gasano, but let's continue.
And of course, this has brought out people in the United States that are simping for the communist regime. As they say, when something's going wrong.
These are pro-government protests, by the way. You can tell from the 26th of July movement flags.
That's not real socialism.
These are pro-government. This is from Miami, not Cuba.
Or it's America's fault. So, of course, are totally not communists in the alternative media, people who just...
I'm going to pause it right here because this is a tanky talking point, and that is you using wrong pictures or wrong footage that are from other places or,
I mean...
they do the same exact thing, for instance. They try to do the same argument to try to deny genocides like the Ukrainian famine of the 1930s. We're saying, those pictures are from the 1920s, not the 1930s famine. They're ignoring the fact that in both Cuba and the Ukraine during the 1930s, people don't have the access to cell phones like we do in the United States. They don't, and the internet is basically a luxury. Of course, you're not gonna have accurate abundance of images or footage of these anti. With all these opposition protests.
In my defense, if you're using wrong footage, you're using wrong footage. I pulled that from, if you notice, there's like a Today Show logo on it. Like, that's where I pulled the footage from. So, if, maybe it's my fault because I should have double-checked the Today Show. But if they're like, these are the protests, look at them, it's kind of hard to find, abundance of footage from the Cuban protests. That being said, I'm willing to concede that point. If that's the wrong location, then it's the wrong location. But it's obviously way easier when the government is cracking down on the internet to get images of pro-government protesters out of the nation.
Yeah, and this is not just that. It's just a dumb talking point. I mean, Like, for example, like neo-Nazis would do the same thing, would find pictures from the Armenian genocide or other events, and saying, and unfortunately, some museums or some documentaries would confuse that to pictures of the Holocaust, and these neo-Nazis would like make, oh, those pictures are fake, or these pictures are not from the Holocaust. See?
Well, it's like this was mislabeled, therefore your premise is wrong, which is like that's not how that works. But sure. And also, like, as I pointed out in my video, you can talk all you want about the pro-government rallies. Like, the protesters were out in the streets. The Cuban government was cracking down on them. And then the Cuban government called for revolutionaries to get out into the streets.
Yes.
So it's like, yeah, the side that's aligned with the government with more guns is going to be able to produce people a lot of the time that are willing to take the side with more guns.
Yeah, and like I also pointed out, it's been 60 years since this regime is in power. Young people at the time, right now, the adults of the country right now have been indoctrinated in a young age to worship the state, and that's why. Well,
it's also you have what you call it. You also have a bunch of people that had they not been able to escape to America, because remember, Americans aren't fleeing to Cuba. People from Cuba are fleeing to the United States of America. Like, maybe the numbers would have been bolstered a little bit more had a lot of people who were against the regime not escaped the regime. Like, again, the whole premise of this conversation has to go based on the fact that we can pretend that a bunch of people haven't fled this exact government.
Unless you're Tupac.
His examples of protests in Cuba, a lot of them are from Miami, and a lot of them are also from pro-government rallies. So interesting stuff.
Scandinavian model are talking about how this is all due to America forcing food shortages. Now we're going to get into this, but first we got to hear from our sponsor, which is related to food.
I got this.
These people are waving our flag. They're demanding freedom.
This is a protest from Miami. They're not waving your flag. These people are in the USA. This is literally the fucking USA. You can tell just by looking at it. It's the most obvious fucking picture of the fucking USA imaginable. This is your example of Cubans waving the US flag in Cuba? Give me a fucking break.
Demanding COVID-19 vaccines.
Let me pause this, because I read an article on this, but let me see. I mean, you cited an example, right? Cuban. Okay, this is your video right here. You cited.
Yeah.
I know I found an article, but I don't know you linked it.
It's the New York Times article. It's right there. You're about to click on it. Is that not the image? Okay, I used a different image.
Wait, hold on. Oh, god damn it. I hate the New York Times for this.
I know.
Wait, hold on.
Uh-oh, we're seeing your search history.
Oh, shit. Wait, hold on.
You should open up a private browser and then try to drop that New York Times link in there. Maybe it won't say that you've read like 4 articles today.
Hold on. God.
I mean, you could see it before it goes there. I don't know if you want to screen grab it before or whatever. You can see like an image that looks like somebody waving the flag in Cuba. Like, is he denying that happened? Like, one occurrence of that happened?
Let me see. Wait, hold on. Ah, fuck, the same thing. Hold on. Let me see if I can find that article. Hold on for a sec.
That's the other thing I noticed about his video. He's like, this is what he calls research. He puts headlines in there. It's like the articles are linked in the description. John Rambo says this is a horrible stream. Zorro, I mean, he's got you there.
Hold on. Let me.
Hold
on. I found the article right here. How do I? Hold on. Let me add another. Window capture. At source. There we go. There we go. Done. Let me put this down here. This is gonna be quick. Hold on, here's the article. Do you see the article? Wait, this is not it. Wait. There we go. This is the article right here. Cuban jailed him as the man waving the flag. Now he seeks asylum in Tampa, right? And I think it shows the picture Hold on. Hold on. Let me see. It has to keep. Sorry, guys, if it's the first time I made a live stream.
No excuses.
Right. This is the guy. Hold on. Let me find the picture.
Oh, so he jailed at. Oh, so this is the guy wearing the flag that like he's seeking asylum in Tampa.
Yes, that's the guy. Let me see it. I got an image. I know. This here it is. This is the freaking. This is from the footage from the protesters. See, do you see it? Right here. That's the actual footage. This is actually from Cuba. This is the scene here. And I know, like, of course, the media would use other photos from Miami because those are better photos.
Yeah.
But keep it like I pointed out. Cubans don't have the access to cell phones or could afford cell phones, and so hence
Well,
why
they cut down the internet, so it takes a while for images to get out of there. The free, prosperous nation of Cuba cut the internet to quench the protesters, the place where everybody's happier, and nobody's fleeing the nation. Like, I don't know if you know that.
Wait, hold on. Let me now the catch. There we go. Now let's go back to the watching this dumb video here.
Demanding more food. And of course, this has led a lot of people on the left to be uncomfortable because they are typically in favor of protests in theory, but they love communist dictatorships. Think of Bernie Sanders talking about how awesome Cuba was, which, by the way, great strategy by the Sanders campaign to do that right before the Florida Democratic primary. And I'm not being hyperbolic about this, and I'm not being hyperbolic about how widespread this is among the mainstream media. Get a load of this Reuters headline that I actually saw about how the Cuban protesters, the people protesting the communist regime, are actually going to exacerbate the COVID-19 pandemic. Funny how that works. If you're a Black Lives Matter rioter and you're aligned with Marxists and you're destroying private businesses, killing people.
Also, I mean, if there's property destruction, does that make the protest bad? Because in Cuba, they destroyed tons of property. But anyway, why is he bringing up BLM all of a sudden? What the fuck does that have to do with the Cuban protests?
Why am I... I'm talking about media bias. Again, doofus can't follow the point. I'm talking about media bias in the way that they cover protests. And much like the anti-lockdown protest, they trotted out the doctors and the mainstream news articles to talk about how this was going to exacerbate the pandemic. And I'm comparing and contrasting to protests for left-wing causes, where they say that racism is actually more than social distance, like this headline lays out. So he totally missed the point. He's like, why is he bringing this up? Even though I explain exactly why I'm bringing it up, because the discussion is media bias.
Yeah, exactly.
This isn't hard to figure.
He will bring this up again later, and then he's gonna claim that you're saying you think the media supporter of Cuba. You're wrong. They hate it, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at the coverage.
All right, let's continue.
Ruining people's lives because you're promoting a race.
Like, no one is against the protest because of COVID. That's not why people are against them. Okay, it just took like one headline from Reuters, which is apparently to him like some sort of communist propaganda organization. What world does this guy live in? What the fuck did the BLM protest have to do? These are different people. These aren't even the same fucking people. Does he think is Reuters public health officials in the USA? Reuters. What are you talking about?
Agenda that is anti-American. Then all of a sudden,
hello, what?
Yeah, can you pause it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's confusing. He's like now he's saying that I'm saying that Reuters is public health officials. My point is that they contact public health officials to give them something for the headline. And when it's people protesting the lockdown in Michigan, and you can look up these headlines because they were literally days apart, then those protests are going to spread the virus. But when it's Black Lives Matter rioting and going on for months, all of a sudden that doesn't do the virus. So when we see something going on in Cuba, we start hearing about how the virus is going to spread. So again, I didn't say Reuters was a public health official. That's just not present. The point I was making was very clear. You'd have to be an imbecile to not get it.
Yeah, and the other thing, didn't Benjamin Crump went on national television, like arguing that the police response, like for example, like in the law the census made a law that you cannot block traffic, right? And this is response to BLM riots or BLM protests, blocking the roads and stuff. And in Miami during these protests, Obviously, of course, there's going to be some people be blocking the highway, and the police are not really enforcing it the same way. So people are arguing that's racist. And even Benjamin Crump went on national television on this, which, like, come on, like, Benjamin Crump is like,
There's a difference between delaying traffic outright and intentionally blocking it, like, as the point. So if you have like a mass of people crossing a street at once, then yeah, that's technically going to block traffic in the intermediary. However, if you're literally your quote unquote protest is you shutting down the highway, that's completely different.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, hold on.
Sudden, you don't spread the virus, but if you're protesting Cuba under the threat of an actually authoritarian government, an actual communist nightmare health,
I guarantee you, most of the fucking libs who support like BLM protests and shit in the US also support the Cuban protests. Being against the Cuban government is a...
Oh my god, have you seen BLM's Twitter account?
Bullshit.
Like, holy shit. Hold on, oh my god, have you seen their freaking Twitter? BLM made a tweet, praising Fidel,
Black Lives Matter specifically supported the Cuban government, not the protesters. But I guarantee it. BadEmpanada guarantees it, even though Black Lives Matter, the organization, specifically said that this was a Western plot against their brothers in Cuba.
Yeah, this Australian dude who's basically living in Argentina is trying to tell us that us Latinos do not know what Cuba is, right? That's exactly what he...
I mean, we don't even have to get into the whole identity thing. It's just that he's 100% wrong in what he just said.
Bipartisan thing in the US, but these fucking dumbasses don't know anything even about their own politics, because this guy doesn't know a single fucking thing about the world. Even in his own country, he obviously doesn't know shit. But the second that you leave those borders, it's just all like a mush of like whatever random like propaganda he happens to have offhandedly consumed.
Escape, then all of a sudden you're spreading the virus. Funny how that works. Funny how the virus tends to have political affiliations, which is interesting because the Cuban government has totally botched this virus protection rollout. But that's just the hypocrisy that is
virus protection rollout.
Tip of the iceberg, because our totally not supportive of communist dictatorship friends Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball also have their own hot takes about how the US is actually responsible for the suffering in Cuba. So let's hear about this from them.
So there's a number of things to say. First of all, if you want to talk about, there's
completely agree. Are especially
plus, if the U.S. lifts the embargo up and to protect upfront immediately.
That is causing all the problems within the Cuban government. It's not totally about the communism. Don't even talk about the communism. Ignore the communism. Ignore the people in Cuba.
It's about the communism? The communism?
That are also demanding freedom. No. It's all...
Are they demanding freedom? I mean, what are the people in like the bigger government rallies demanding?
All about the embargo. It's all about the United States strangling the Cubans off from food and prescription drug imports. Really, it is definitely true. And listen to Crystal Ball talk about how we have a solution to that problem.
Wait, he didn't
pause it?
refute
Can you just
what
pause
they said.
it?
Yeah.
What are the people in the rallies that were ordered by the president of Cuba demanding? Huh? What are those people asking for? What are the people who were told by the government that are members of the party to get out into the streets? What are they asking for? Not really as relevant to me. The people protesting the government kind of more important than the people that the government put out on the street.
Yeah, this guy John Ramp was a freaking troll.
Somebody asked, did he skip the context of what I was talking about? I actually don't know if he skipped over in the video. I haven't watched this, and I was on vacation when this video came out.
Dude.
Also, people are asking if I'm Hispanic. Yes, I'm half Hispanic. Watch some of my videos.
Oh, and by the way, people argue he's half Irish. I'm like, dude, there's actually Puerto Ricans do have Irish ancestry. Believe it or
not. No, I'm half Irish and half Hispanic, but the Irish side of my family's from America.
There's a lot of Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico that are descendant of Irish people who escaped Jamaica.
That's whatever.
At all. He's just saying what they were saying, but in a mocking tone. Is that an argument? Is an argument when you just say what your opponents are saying, but in a mocking way? Did he just disprove them with facts and logic? You're gonna have to do more to prove that the embargo has no effect than just saying, oh shit, they think that it's all the embargo. They didn't even mention the communism. Buddy, it doesn't fucking matter if you think communism is good or not. Obviously, the embargo is gonna have an effect whether communism is good or not. If you take any look at the estimates for what Cuba loses to the embargo, the Cuban government estimates, for example.
Yeah.
So he's like, is that an argument? No, my parody where I'm mocking them is not the argument. That would be me parodying them, imitating them.
That would not be me arguing a point. Again, we have to pretend like this is a legitimate good faith attack on me. That like that's my entire counter argument, and I don't go on to explain this later. But also hilarious, he's about to give us the Cuban government's estimate, because communist governments super accurate in their estimates of damage on what the embargo does to them. Of course, the Cuban government is going to blame a huge portion of their problems on the embargo. And they're not going to blame, their mismanagement of farming policy, the fact that the government determines what you grow, how much of it, and that if the government who is responsible for transporting those crops fails to pick them up, because there's an issue with the country that supplies your oil, like Venezuela, then that's on the centrally planned economy. Don't talk about that. Don't worry about that.
Okay,
that's not the issue.
The
U.S.
continues. My bad.
The U.S. is obligated to support the communist regime.
Yeah. Some dumb idiot saying that I literally hitting 10-second skip as he's watching the video. I'm like, only thing I skipped was like the clips of Kyle Kalinske and Crystal talking, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna say that he skipped, like the whole point is that I imitated what they were saying and didn't argue against them. So like, do we have to watch all that? Like this video is 45 minutes long. I wasn't even expecting to watch it.
Yeah, we're just gonna hold on. Let me.
1 trillion. 1 trillion across what? 60 years? So let's say 1 trillion divided by 60. But that's like what? 16 billion. So let's say we take 16 billion. What's Cuba's yearly GDP? Okay, so if Cuba is losing 16 billion due to the embargo per year, that would mean that it's losing like 15% of its gross national wealth minimum. So you can say the embargo on Cuba is depressing its economy by 15%, basically. So what that would mean is that it's clearly having an effect. It doesn't matter if Cuba has a terrible communist system that you hate, that is terrible.
Yeah.
So if I was like this guy, and I just wanted a nitpick to be an ass, he said that would mean that Cuba is losing 15% of its gross national wealth. You mean GDP or economic output, BadEmpanada. You're just wrong. You don't know anything. You don't know the difference between gross national wealth and GDP. Wow, you suck.
This would be making it worse. And clearly, since Cuba hasn't had this crisis, wasn't having this sort of crisis beforehand, that has spurred protest, something has changed, okay? So even with the embargo, people were not having these problems that spurred the protest before. So something has changed, which would be the pandemic. So clearly, at least in the short term,
he's arguing against himself right now.
Here that has
he's
caused
saying
the problems.
The embargo is causing these problems, but something has changed because the embargo wasn't causing these problems before. So he's contradicting himself right now, if anybody's paying attention.
COVID-19 pandemic, which my friend here doesn't seem to want to acknowledge because I think he's one of the conservatives who likes to downplay its effect on everything possible. But yeah, it's like, it doesn't matter if you think communism is good or bad. It's a matter of fucking reality. Putting an embargo on a country, your main trading partner, putting an embargo on you, or your main geographical trading partner, putting an embargo on you that not only impedes trade from that country in every single respect, including food and medicine, by the way, the exemptions don't matter. I've gone over this in another video of mine that I made recently, which explained how the exemptions are only there for PR purposes, and that in practice, the US still...
I want to bring up... Hold on, I'm going to show you guys something, right? It's a source I found here. U.S. food exports to Cuba increased 74.7% in March 2021. Increased 54% year to year. So not only are our exports to Cuba with food has increased by that much, is going up year by year. Also, which I think he was going to bring this up later.
The exemptions don't matter, though.
Wait, what?
The exemptions don't matter, though. I don't know if you heard.
He
said the exemptions don't matter. So if you're going to show numbers of food exports from the U.S. to Cuba, I just want you to know before you show those numbers that he said the exemptions don't matter.
I think he's going to mention later about Canada, like, because Cuba and Canada are great trade partners. But
well, yeah, that's because Trudeau is Fidel Castro's son.
Not only that, America wants that relationship because, in fact, Canada was that close to like straining the relationship, but America sort of made them like reverse that because they use America used Canada as like a midway, like talking, like they use it as they use Canada as a way to say, hey, if we need to talk to Cuba, we got to talk through Canada, sort of way. So Canada is very, very important to Cuba, right? And then I think later in this video he's gonna mention Canada, but he argues that Canada is like a small country. I'm like, Canada's a first world country, where large amounts of food, like farming lands. The only weakness is probably because it's so north, but at the same time, like having Canada's like very like to downplay the role of like how essential Canada is to Cuba is like ridiculous.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Canadian tourists that are going to Cuba. It's one of the things you learn when you like grow up after you hear this version of the embargo about how the U.S. cut this country off, is that if you were to go visit Cuba, you'd run into a bunch of Canadians.
Let's continue.
All right, let's hustle up because this video is too fucking long.
Yeah, let me skip to. Let me see.
It's childish.
Get to the India part. I thought that part was hilarious.
Oh yeah, let's go to India. Let me see. We talk about India. Wait, what is this?
The U.S. government admitted that was the point of the embargo. Source where they straight up fucking said when a bunch of shit by.
We find that.
I think it's vaccines. India is doing.
Okay, I'm interested in seeing what he says for this.
Worst jobs.
Yeah.
So, by the way, before you jump to the India thing, I want to point out where he's like, the U.S. government said that the embargo was meant to overthrow the Cuban government. It's like, yeah, they enacted a policy with a purpose. Like, nobody's surprised by that.
Yeah, and also, like, why is it, like, America's responsibility to trade with absolutely everyone? Like, if I go to, let's say, I'm a vegan, let's say, an example, right? An hypothetical example, I was a vegan, I do not support the cruel, humane killing of animals. And I was able to make a movement that actually hurt a meat, a cow, hurting the businesses of like meat factories, and a lot of people got like, fired or lose their jobs because of the boycott. I'm like, am I guilty for those people losing their jobs? Like, I mean, like should people be forced to trade with absolutely everyone?
Yeah, it's like this nation has had nuclear missiles pointed at us from our great enemy, the Soviet Union, and the United States is somehow still obligated to prop them up. We have to prop up this authoritarian regime.
Not only that, Cuba,
because communism needs a capitalist nation.
Not just that, like Cuba also sponsors terrorist groups, like not just like around the world, in the United States. A great example is the Weather Underground. Another example are the machete wielders of Puerto Rico, which is a terrorist group in Puerto Rico trying to get like Puerto Rico independence, and they are known to commit horrible terrorist attacks. And at one point, they were considered more dangerous than Al Qaeda. They were sponsored by Cuba, right? So they're sponsoring terrorist groups in our country, and they also the government of Cuba also has worked with Pablo Escobar in smuggling drugs into our country.
Yeah, but I mean, we need to prop up their regime. I mean, they're anti-capitalists, and they need to be propped up by the capital. What? Like, no. Of any country in the world, and India notoriously does not recognize patent laws. And one of the funniest things about these lefties is they'll talk about how India is brave in standing up to Big Pharma in their non-recognition of patent law.
Who has ever talked about how brave India is in standing up to Big Pharma? Like, is your evidence for this like a random headline from the fucking guy?
Yeah.
Can you just pause this? First of all, there's a bunch of articles that I pulled up where they're praising the Indian Supreme Court decision from the year that we're talking about. Like, I even left in the year, like, this article is this many years old in some of the screenshots that I used, right? So this got, like, huge amount of praise. But who specifically? Crystal Ball. Like, I've heard Crystal Ball bring this up and praise it as they were standing up to the pharmaceutical companies. The person that I'm responding to, the person that I was making a response video to, that would be who?
Guardian. I've never heard anyone talk about how brave India is, especially since India.
He's never heard it, so it never happened. I don't know if you know that. He never heard it. I mean,
Yeah. He's gonna bring up that India is a fascist government. Hold on.
Has a right-wing fascist government currently.
But then they'll also talk about how there's a shortage.
Pause it.
Yeah.
Again. So, like, the court press. First of all, India was incredibly protectionist after they left the United Kingdom. They became not really super socialist, but they had like very strong socialist leanings. They nationalized heavy industries or whatever. This is like left over from that.
and it predates Modi. So now he's like, so he says that I have a Guardian article. Like if you would have clicked the sources instead of saying, oh, he just has headlines, it's all linked in the description. Like you could show them the description of the video. It's all there. Like you could see that this like predates or is at the beginning of Modi, like a lot of this stuff. But India has been knocking off prescription drugs for years. Like they only recognize patents for companies in their own country. So like even his stupid retort about how Modi, India is a borderline fascist government now because Modi, it has nothing to do with the precedent that I'm talking about. So he's a total schmuck on this. Of
but who's ever praised because it? Of the left ever praised that?
Wait, what?
I said, but who's ever praised that? Would the left ever praise ignoring patent laws?
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, Sam Cedar, by the way, has a thing on his channel that I watched where they talked about with Emma Vigeland about how India has been really strong against the pharmaceutical companies, but then the patents are still preventing them from manufacturing the vaccine in India.
Hold on.
Laws. Again, these companies produce this with high-end technology that cannot be replicated by nations that seek to knock them off. On top of that...
Wait. No. Some of the most advanced production in the world is located in the third world, because that's where it's outsourced to. The world's biggest vaccine producer is Indian, for one. The Serum Institute of India is an Indian-owned company that manufactures vaccines in India. She's the world's biggest vaccine manufacturer. And I'll have you know that they're also manufacturing vaccines in India. They are manufacturing a variant of the AstraZeneca vaccine in India. So this guy has no fucking clue what he's talking about, for one. But two, why the fuck are we talking about?
Yeah, this is the same argument that guy from Discord made towards you.
Yeah, so what we're talking about is like certain countries don't have the tech wherewithal to manufacture the mRNA vaccines, right?
Yeah.
Now, India's problem, again, if you were to look at the source in the description, is specifically that they don't have the infrastructure to store vaccines, even if they could manufacture everything that they needed, which again, you being able to manufacture other vaccines does not lead me to believe automatically that you will be capable of manufacturing enough vaccines for 1 billion people. So like these have to be stored at certain temperatures. Like there are problems with the infrastructure of India across the country that prevent them from being able to do this. There's an entire source, like he keeps saying, he's just going to headlines. He's just going to headlines. There's an entire source in the description that talks about the specific problems with India. But remember, they say broadly the problem in the third world is that they don't release the patents to the third world. So India was an example. They have infrastructure issues, and there are other nations that can't knock it off.
Yeah, hold on. Let's...
About vaccines in India. Why the fuck are you talking about vaccines in India? This doesn't have shit to do with anything. Not only is he wrong about the fact that, about his idea that like these countries couldn't just take patents and put them into production. They absolutely could. They have the pre-existing infrastructure, not just India, but also Cuba. Okay, Cuba obviously has vaccine producing infrastructure because they've produced millions of doses of their own vaccines already on the island. So, you know, maybe if these patents had been waived,
the people protesting for vaccines, there's no problem.
Yeah, it's I think he made that same talking point too, that these people are protesting for vaccine in a video he made on the protest. So he's contradicting himself again.
The U.S. isn't giving them the vaccines, but also the Cuban government is nailing it, and they don't even need the U.S. to give them the vaccines.
Earlier, like say, late last year, Cuba wouldn't have had to develop its own vaccines, and it could have just taken these patents and started manufacturing them in its own country because it already has this supposed high-tech vaccine-producing infrastructure that this guy thinks it doesn't in the country, obviously, because it literally produces its own COVID vaccines already. You know, you don't fucking believe me? Well, let's look at Cuba's vaccine rollout, okay? Cuba has applied 9 million doses. Okay?
Yeah.
So, two things. One, I didn't say Cuba doesn't have the medical industry necessary. We're talking about India and their limitation.
Yes.
Specifically. But again, now the U.S. has to turn over the patents that our drug companies developed to the Cuban government, even though the Cuban government is nailing it without them, and the Cuban government refused to join the COVAX program.
Which they can. Like, BadEmpanada is denying that they can. It's saying that later in the video he tries to say that they can't do that because of the embargo. I'm like, no, they can't. They actually can.
Yeah, you can look it up. And by the way, the Cuban vaccine, they rushed it out before it completed that like third step. Now, the U.S. vaccines were rushed out, to be clear, but they at least completed the phase 3 trials. Now they did it all faster, but you can look up articles about the Cuban government like rushing it beyond the while it was still in experimentation. And again, like he's quoting the Cuban vaccination numbers from the Cuban vaccine, so we'll see how that does long term.
Okay, almost
but
all
they
of
were
those have been
offered them from the U.S.
Yeah. Also, I did research on the vaccine itself. It's funny how they're also using the vaccine as a propaganda. Like, for instance, they named one of the vaccines after Jose Marti, which is basically a huge hero, a historical hero in, Cuban culture. Despite the fact that he's an anti-communist, he actually wrote letters condemning socialism, believe it or not. But they name a vaccine after him.
My point is that the Cuban government didn't join COVAX. They said that they could have had the vaccine, right? We're not giving them the patents because what if there's another pandemic and like we need our pharmaceutical industry to develop these vaccines and they don't want to do it because the government's just going to steal it from them right after.
Yeah.
Right. So it's actually bad policy to do what he's advocating for. Not that he would acknowledge that because he's a worthless communist, but the Cubans refused the vaccine anyway. Like there is a program run by the World Health Organization. And even if the US didn't give them the, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, or Pfizer, there is no reason at all that the European Union wouldn't have given them the AstraZeneca, like through this program. So like they had it there, it existed. We've seen some amazing things in this program. Like the Israelis had a bunch of doses that were going to expire and the South Koreans had demand. And within the week, they got all those vaccines into South Korea so that they could not go to waste. So the Cubans could have participated in that program, but they said they were going to develop their own vaccine and that they themselves would be responsible for vaccinating people in Latin America. Like that's the propaganda push.
Yeah.
This idea that these countries cannot produce vaccines, where does he even get it from? And why is he even focusing so much on this patent thing? Like he for one, he didn't refute anything about the embargo, like exacerbating Cuba's issues, which it obviously does. Obviously, right? Impeding trade between like the US and Canada, for example.
Yeah.
He said impeding trade between US and Canada. The reason I brought up the patents is because that's what Crystal Ball brought up, that we should just churn over the patents.
Yeah.
So that's why I brought it up. And I showed an example of a nation that typically ignores patents and their vaccine rollout.
Example would also cause huge economic issues, particularly for Canada because it's a smaller country.
See, that's my point. Like you said, it's a small country. I'm like, dude, no, Canada's like I pointed out, is an industry of they have plenty of farmable land. They're a first world nation like the United States.
They're a bigger nation than Cuba.
Yeah, and it's probably one of the wealthiest countries in the Americas, too. So I don't know why. Well, it's a small country. I think it's talk about population wise.
Yeah, it's like 30 million. It's smaller than California, or about the same as California. So.
Yeah,
I mean that would be a massive country though, like about the same size as California.
Doesn't matter if Canada was.
Like their population is like half of the UK, approximately half, right?
Yeah.
Like, do we consider the UK a small country? The United States is the third most populated country in the world.
Not just that. The United States is the second largest Spanish-speaking country in the world.
Yeah, but I'm saying the United States is the third largest nation in terms of population in the world. So we're unusually large by comparison to other nations. Somebody said Korea is small. Korea's population is pretty big. It's bigger than Canada.
Socialist or free market capitalist, it would cause problems. But two, he's just wrong in every fucking sense. He didn't deal with the point about the embargo and he immediately moved on to some tangent about vaccines in India. And
we're skipping here because we already addressed that point. Let me go to the part about. Was he going to talk about the argument about...
No, you could just keep going. Just let him play for a while until we get to In fact, the Cuban government themselves have refused the vaccines. And a couple of months ago, the mainstream media...
They haven't refused the vaccines. They didn't buy vaccines from these US companies. Do you think there might be a reason for that?
Was celebrating this... They didn't refuse it. They just chose not to buy vaccines through the COVAX program. Like, you see how he weasels around every bad decision of the Cuban government? Why didn't he just move to Cuba? Just go for it.
Yeah,
go live out
he's
your paradise.
Australian. He's from Australia. He moved to Argentina and is spreading his dumb agenda to these Latino countries that are very like culturally right wing, right? Like he's basically one of those like evangelicals that go to like Africa and spreading like Christian fundamentalism, but instead of like Africa, it's Argentina, and instead of like Christianity, it's spreading freaking Marxism. I'm like, dude, like why don't move to a freaking country like Bolivia or Cuba or freaking Nicaragua? Like it's not the same thing as like it's not the same argument as like if you don't like America, move out. You chose to live in Argentina. How come you don't choose to live in like let's say Bolivia, right?
Go to Cuba. They'll accept them. They love expats from Western countries.
He probably won't join Cuba because then he will lose his like his freaking internet access. He will lose his freaking income, right?
No, but that's okay. It's a social society that will take care of all his material needs. He doesn't need it. And they'll probably hook him up. He's a propagandist for them.
Yeah, he's going to be like the
Maybe
Nathan Rich for Cuba. He's going to be like Nathan Rich.
You think he moved to Argentina because of all the Germans that are there? The Nazis?
You say Nazis, yeah.
All right, you from the Cuban government.
Okay.
You have glorious headlines and articles about how...
It's weird how, like, factual reporting on what's happening in Cuba, like, Cuba, is developing its own vaccines, that's true. Cuba's vaccine rivals these vaccines, that's true. These are all just factual statements, okay? This is not celebration. This guy, like, takes news outlets simply reporting on what's happening in Cuba as an endorsement of whatever that is, as, like, them simping for Cuba. He's offended at the very notion that people are talking about things that are happening in Cuba, aside from protests against the government. It's very weird.
Glorious headlines and articles about how Cuba is thumbing their nose at Big Pharma, how they refuse to join the COVAX program, which is a program by the World Health Organization to get...
So let's say, why is it that Cuba might not want to buy US vaccines? Why is it that Cuba might have taken the decision to manufacture their own vaccines? Do you think...
Pause it. So before, the Cuban government didn't refuse it. It was the U.S. refusing it, and the blockade and the embargo and blah, 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 right? And again, the U.S. vaccine, they have 3 of them, right? The AstraZeneca is not a U.S. vaccine. They could have gotten that through the COVAX program. It's not a U.S. program. It's a World Health Organization program. So all of a sudden, we're here. And my point is the contradicting point of the video. Oh, look, Bearing's in your chat.
Wait, who's in the chat?
Contradicting point of the video is
Holy
that...
shit, yeah. Hey, Bearing.
All right, so the contradicting point of the video is that the headlines are celebrating Cuba, or they're like praising them. They're talking about how they're punching above their weight, how they're going to do this, that, and the other. And then when the protest happens, the media is like, they're protesting over COVID vaccines. And instead of blaming the Cuban government for their decisions, their vaccine rollout, etc., they're blaming the United States government for not giving them the patents, even though they were doing it on its own and they were thumbing their nose at Big Pharma. Again, these points are not difficult to understand. I think Bearing's here to get his Australian brethren out of here.
Yeah. Sean, I'm 43,000% or 1,000,000% Irish, 10% German, 4% Scottish, and 1% English, according to the Irish maths. Yeah.
Somebody said I'm 50% Puerto Rican and 50% the person who killed Michael Brown. Oh my God. Denounce and reject.
I think it's because they have a lot of experience, maybe, with the embargo, impeding medicine imports into Cuba, impeding their ability to negotiate with U.S. pharmaceutical companies.
We're not talking about pharmaceutical companies. We're talking about the COVAX program.
Yeah, we're talking specifically about the COVAX program. The World Health Organization is running it. And if you were so inclined, you could get the AstraZeneca vaccine.
Oh, let me skip. I'm trying to find the part about... wait, is he...
The reason they are developing their own vaccines is not because they want to stick it to the man or anything. It's because they don't have the fucking option. They literally do not have the option as other countries need to negotiate.
That's the whole point.
Oh my God.
The reason they refuse the thing, the reason they don't want to buy the vaccine through the COVAX program is because they don't have the option. The reason they said no to their option is because they don't have the option. again, excusing. First of all, I thought that the guy that's trying to grow the Castro beard right here and look like a little mini Fidel
he does
Castro.
not. Like he try. If you watch his videos, he tries to make him out like he's like a Castro wannabe. I think he looks like an Aussie hipster version of Rasputin, the freaking love machine of Russia.
But like, this guy, he said that they were nailing it. Like, this is the problem. Like, so you have to ignore, again, to talk about Cuba, you have to ignore the fact that a bunch of Cubans fled Cuba for the United States of America. You just have to pretend that that didn't happen in order to defend the Cuban government. Right? So that's what he's doing. It's never mentioned here. He wants to talk about like not emphasizing the embargo enough. You don't want to emphasize that people fled Cuba, right? Okay. So ignoring that. But now he's playing both things where the Cuban government is nailing it with their vaccine rollout. They're killing it, their boss. And like they didn't need the U.S. vaccines, but also they were denied the U.S. vaccines, but also that's why they refused the Cuban vaccines. What are you talking about?
The big question, does AstraZeneca cure premature ejaculation?
I don't know. I know the Pfizer doesn't do anything for that.
Pharmaceutical companies that do business with the US or that are based in the US or that produce vaccines in the US, they don't have the right to these sorts of equal sort of negotiation.
Hold on.
Food and medicine was saying that the bureaucrats.
I love that tell, by the way, if you pause it.
Wait, what?
I love that tell. He's like, they don't have the right to that equal things, and he's like rubbing his nose. That's what we call a tell. When somebody doesn't know what they're talking about and they're making stuff up, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
To be able to buy vaccines from the USA or to be able to just not have to go to the trouble of developing their own.
Skipping where you addressed this.
% completely vaccinated.
Who?
You compare that.
Pause it again.
The part. Wait, what?
He's saying that they can't buy vaccines from the United States. Like, again, nobody knows anything outside of the world. Doesn't realize that the COVAX program is through the World Health Organization. Like that's how that works. But it's like they don't want to, but also they had to develop their vaccine. Their vaccine is awesome, but they have the shortage because their vaccine doesn't cover it. But also look how good they are. So he's all over the place right here.
Yeah, Aussie Rasputin has too much Vegemite.
To like fucking its neighbors
too much
like
Vegemite.
Jamaica. 4% completely vaccinated, 300,000 doses. Like the neighbors over here, for example, are doing fucking awful. Mexico, 18% completely vaccinated. Even Argentina, which is doing relatively well for being such a big country, only 13% fully vaccinated. Like in Latin America, Cuba is punching above its weight in terms of vaccine rollout with a vaccine that is almost completely produced in Cuba.
Western.
All right, hold on. Let me.
Can you pause it right quick?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I don't play a doctor or scientist on TV. But last time I checked, the population of Cuba is in the 11 to 15 million range, and the population of Mexico is like 120 million.
Yeah, and I believe like the most of the population in Cuba is in the capital of Havana.
Yeah. Also, these are Cuban government numbers.
And we're talking about a vaccine that is probably not as effective as like the vaccines we get from the United States, like Pfizer or Johnson and Johnson.
I mean, it could be. We'll find out.
I mean, like for example, a lot of these freaking lefties would try to make the argument that Cuba has this vaccine for lung cancer or something like that. But then even the likes of what was that website?
Yeah, I've heard about the lung cancer vaccine.
Like even Snopes thinks that's like pointing out that it's only you should take that with a grain of salt because this vaccine, the one for lung cancer, hasn't really been tested outside of Cuba.
Right. But even if it's like 40% effective, a vaccine for lung cancer, that is amazing. Like credit where credit is due. And the reason they developed that is for the cigars.
And
Bering is
also,
a doctor.
Like, I'm gonna bring this up in my video on Cuba. So they like to talk about this like Cubans have a longer life expectancy than the United States, ignoring the fact that Latinos live longer than Anglos due to the fact of we have different diets. And also, there's one leftist named DSO called Marxist, Democratic Marxist 01, who brought this up, and he shows a freaking graph about the life expectancy. And guess what? It compares to other countries, the United States, and guess what? Puerto Rico has a longer life expectancy than Cuba. the quote unquote colony of the United States, and they have a longer life expectancy than Cuba.
So there's a life expectancy is usually like BS. There's an insurance model where they adjust for the risk. You know, they control for automobile accidents and death by homicide, which are higher in the United States than in like Europe or Japan.
Yeah,
or
also
Korea.
Have an obesity problem, and also the fact that Americans love sugar more.
But just those things like homicide, suicide, and car accidents, because the U.S. drives more than almost any other country. If you were to adjust for those, right, then the United States would become number one, at least in the 1990s and the early 2000s, number one in life expectancy. So you're comparing apples to oranges. It's like when they say Cuba's infant mortality rate is lower than the United States. First of all, Latin Hispanics have better infant mortality rates than white people in the United States of America. So there might be something else to that. Second of all, the Cubans have like they abort anything with birth defects, and they don't count that. Like babies that would have died.
Cuba does
they don't count that,
which sounds like a fascist regime would do.
Second of all, or third of all, the United States counts any single birth, even if it's alive for a second, in its infant mortality rate statistics. So Europe, like in France, they don't count a birth before 24 weeks in infant mortality statistics, and it has to be alive for like more than 2 days. So if the United States normalized their infant mortality statistics, then our infant mortality rate would cut in half. So like they put all these like objective sounding metrics that seem like they're comparing apples to apples, but if you dive into the numbers, it's apples to oranges. Like we count everything as in our infant mortality statistics because we have a more pro-life country and all that, and none of these countries do. Like we would be on par with Scandinavia if we counted infant mortality the way that Scandinavia does. And the CDC even acknowledges this. You could look it up on their website and in the video that I did on this, where we were talking about that second thought guy.
Yeah.
It's a high level or mid, sort of middle, slightly better thing.
Do this according to the mainstream media and save.
They literally have done that.
Hold on, let me skip.
Embargoing vaccines.
Literally.
Also, it's really funny how all these people are anti-free trade.
And also, no, the Cuba protests have little to do with the vaccine rollout there. More to do with the economic crisis caused by the COVID pandemic, which has
impeded.
I'm going to
slow this down a bit because this is very important. And because I have some points to mention about this. Wait, hold on. Let me go to playback speed to normal, and after that, I'll bring it back to super speed.
Trade and depressed economies the world over, with a particularly strong effect in Cuba, particularly Cuban government.
Also, it's really funny how all these people are anti-free trade. They call trading with third world countries exploitation of those third world countries. But now, because the U.S. government won't trade with Cuba, aka they won't exploit Cuba, that's a huge problem.
What? No one thinks that trade by itself is exploitive.
Pause it. I'm going to bring up like a point. You can bring your point first.
Two quick things. So what this genius, we'll call him, seems to consistently forget is that I'm responding to Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball. So when I talk about these people who are against free trade, I'm talking about Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball. I recently did a video where Kyle was talking about his disagreements with Cenk and that whole Jimmy Dore thing. And one of the things that he got mad, or he said that Cenk was always wrong on, is that Cenk thinks some of these free trade deals are good. And Kyle doesn't, because Kyle is anti-free trade. He's very protectionist. So who is this guy talking about would be the people that I was responding to.
In addition, you also got Tanks complaining about free trade. A great example is that around the time of it's around the time of Obama was in the brinks of lifting trade restrictions into Cuba. You got the likes of the quote-unquote #1 Marxist on YouTube, Jason Unruh, contradicting himself, whining about the embargo, and now going into 360 and going around and saying, oh, now Cuba is the Americans are now going to exploit Cuba. Now they're going to put factories and sweatshops and shit. Oh, now they're going to, all these, businesses are going into Cuba. They contradict each other. It's just the embargo is some sort of thing that they use as they don't really give a shit. They just use it as a gotcha moment.
John Rambo is like, we should watch the whole video. It's 46 minutes long, and we both seen it. So like,
Yeah,
and
he repeats the same talking points over and over again.
Yeah, it's monolithic ethos' show, and like these are the points he wants to go over. Like, I'm not going to spend the whole time because he rambles, lets my video play almost in full, if not in full. Like, you know, we're trying to get through this.
Hold on.
No one in the entire fucking world, all countries have to trade. Practically almost no country has the capacity to produce everything that it needs by itself, aside from really big ones, especially not a small country like Cuba. So trade is naturally exploitative? What is he talking about? No one thinks that. Isn't this guy a massive Trumper as well? Trump is a massive protectionist. Trump is anti-free trade. Trump is anti-globalism, he calls neoliberalism. This guy's definitely a Trump supporter, right? Trump is a protectionist, dude. Is Trump a fucking socialist? Is Donald fucking Trump the massive fucking protectionist who like constantly talks about how other countries are taking advantage of the USA with unfair trade deals, aka exploitation? Is he a socialist now because he's apparently anti-free trade? Is that what the definition of socialism and communism are? To be anti-free trade? For one, free trade means very different things inside a country.
Yeah.
So one, this is all just a long stretch of Trump is a protectionist. You did Trump protectionist. Does that make him a socialist? Yeah, I've criticized Trump on his protectionist policies. Like, one of the things that I like to point out is, if people remember the carrier deal from Indiana, when Trump first got into office, where a carrier was moving to Mexico. So people praise Trump for this, these tax credits that they gave to the company to keep the jobs there, because, you know, they were going to Mexico in order to produce the stuff for cheaper, because you could pay Mexican workers something like 5 times less. Now, what people don't realize is that the Mexican worker is less productive than the American worker. So so even though they get paid 5 times less, they actually are 7 times less productive. So the actual reason why the carrier was moving to Mexico was not because they could get more productivity for cheaper out of the workers. The reason why is due to an increase in input costs due to tariffs on steel from the Obama administration. Had Trump reversed those tariffs, then we wouldn't have had to give tax credits and all these giveaways to carrier to keep them in the United States of America, because it was actually advantageous based solely on labor to keep them there. So I've criticized trade, like this like idea that trade is a zero-sum game, multiple different times. Like, he just assumes this. He's like, you're a Trumper. Like, for all the like bullshit that he talks about, the assumptions that I'm making, even though I'm not, like, all his video is a bunch of assumptions about me. So he's a doofus. And also, you're not a communist if you're anti-free trade, but communists are anti-free trade. Like, trade based on voluntary consent is a capitalist notion. That's what capitalism is about.
Yeah, that's what is described by Adam Smith. And also, like, for example, the Soviet Union, they do restrict trade too. Like, especially, like, for example, they do trade deals with Pepsi, for instance, but they also, like, for example, with movies, they of course censor that shit. They also, like, implement tariffs to encourage people within the Soviet Union to, use their products. So it's not like, communist regimes are known to have, like, tariffs. Oh, hold on.
Yeah, and look, like, people say, oh, well, the founding fathers advocated for tariffs. Like, look at what the founding fathers said about tariffs. It wasn't to protect domestic industry. It was to pay for the cost of the ports. So they advocated for small tariffs. And you can even see them writing about how they don't want the tariffs to be too high because they don't want it to disrupt the flow of goods and services.
In addition to that, it's also because Britain is sort of like pressuring the United States to, like, not to trade with France, right? Even that's the big reason why the war 1812 started, was because of the trade restrictions, and British sailors antagonizing U.S. Navy with stealing U.S.
Yeah, they would kidnap our soldiers. Like, even though they technically recognized us like a nation, they were not treating us like a nation. But also, even the American Revolution, there was trade restrictions. Like, you had to import all your finished goods from Europe and send your raw materials over there. Like, the Boston Tea Party had to do with regulated trade. The British was trying to force tea from the British East India Company into the United States, like undercut the domestic market.
Well, hold on. Some idiot John Rambo is saying Cuba's infant mortality rate is lower than the U.S. no matter what measurement you use. Saying the government cooks the books with no evidence is just a major cope.
It's not a major cope, you doofus. Like I said, the United States counts every single birth, even if it's alive for a split second, even if you're not sure it's born alive, in their infant mortality statistics. The Cuban government does not. You're comparing apples to oranges. Also, the Cubans are far more likely to abort anything that has a problem.
Yeah.
So if
Cuba
you count,
implements eugenics. Well,
yeah. So if you have one country that counts any child, any weight when they're born at any level of weeks, and you have another country that has heavy restrictions on what they count as a live birth, and it has to be alive for a certain period of time, then you can't expect for them to have equivalent results. Like, so it's an apples to oranges measurement. And by the way, that's not even just a Cuba thing. Like, you want to be, you want to stand for communist Cuba because that's who you are. But that's an issue that we have comparatively to France. France doesn't count 24 any birth before 24 weeks. They also don't count births that result in deaths within like a day after the birth. Like, this is something that the United States is uniquely like counts everything compared to almost every other nation in the world. So when you see any comparison, this doesn't even have anything to do with Cuba. When you see any comparison of the United States to infant mortality that doesn't control for this, then you don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's not a valid comparison.
Let me
versus outside of it, okay? The problem that Cuba has with the embargo is that it doesn't have...
I'm skipping to the part
Is
where
it naturally, by default,
we already addressed
an ownership within a bad, and that Cuba apparently wants to only trade, like, be...
We addressed this.
Trade is... Which trade with is not the same.
Wait,
it also has...
Wait, hold on.
Same thing as...
Hold on, I'm skipping to the part...
Puerto or whatever. Would be earlier, right? Where it was just like... Oh, like he just repeated like what they said. Oh, you speak me embargo.
Hold on, let me. Where's the part talks about? Hold on.
I'm for.
Oh, so he's for.
Wait, hold on.
Even if we pretend the exemptions did anything, because if you embargo Cuba, you stop. You inhibit money, which complete.
It's not a
This for over 50 years, and it has not. I am not somebody who blindly supports the embargo policy. We've been doing this for over 50 years, and it has not gotten rid of the Cuban regime. I'm for.
Oh, so he's for forcing people to suffer as long as it gets rid of the Cuban regime.
Oh my God! He just you just said that you're against the embargo. He freaking BadEmpanada being a straw man and acting like he's the serfs, right? Says that you're for forcing Cubans to suffer. Like,
can you pause this right quick?
Does he understand the American accent? Like, are you kidding me?
Can you pause this right quick?
Yeah, it's already paused.
So, John Rambo, yeah, you can pull sources from the UN and from the WHO. But like I said, unless you control for the factors that I'm talking about, because all these countries do is they take the data as reported by the country and don't account for the differences in what they actually count, then yes, you have to still control for it. But anyway, as for this, so the point of the embargo is to overthrow the Cuban government. It obviously hasn't worked, so I don't support it. Like, if you're going to have a policy to overthrow a government, and this is the best that you can do, it's totally pointless. Also, it allows the communist government in Cuba to save face because they blame all of their problems on the embargo.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see.
Interesting.
More effective policies in order to get rid of the Cuban regime. And one of the reasons why the embargo is not very effective against Cuba is because Cuba already tariffs heavily and taxes heavily imports of food and medicine.
Cuba's tariffs are 9% average. Cuba's isn't even that high, right? 8% average tariff rate. Okay? Same as, like, for example, Brazil, which is not exactly a fucking left-wing country. It's not even a particularly high tariff rate for
food.
Wait, say that again?
Brazil produces a lot more food. Remember those stories about the Amazon burning? They're burning that for farming.
Yeah, they're having a farming problem because like Brazil has a lot of mountains. There's a limited amount of farmland.
Yeah, by the way, here's the abortion rate for Cuba for the doofus. 72.8 abortions per 100 births. That is enormous, according to their own numbers.
A poor country. Where is he getting this idea of heavy tariffs? Where is he getting this from? Is he going to show a source?
And so from other nations. And you don't have to...
Wait, does he know that the US has tariffs, by the way? Trump loves the tariffs. Ask Trump about his tariffs on China. And by default, the US also has tariffs on practically every import to the US. So nonsensical.
To take my word for it, because the president of Cuba has announced temporary lifting of those import taxes until December 31st.
No, that's not what this says.
Until December 31st, 2021, in response to the protests.
That's
so it's not the U.S. government doing a Mac Jedi freaking mind trick on the Cuban government, making them do that. They, like the left in this...
Go back to the point where the headline is there, and he's like, that's not what this says. It literally is what it says.
Wait, hold on. Which one? Here?
The second one.
Wait, go on.
Nonsensical.
Wait,
to take my word for it, because the president of Cuba has announced temporary lifting of those...
Is it this one, or is the one after?
It's the next one.
Import taxes until December 31st.
Like, he says that's not what that says. Look at it.
Cuban eases food and drug imports restrictions after mass protests.
No, that's not what this says.
Until December 31st, 2021, in response to the protests.
That's
so it's not the U.S. government doing a Mac Jedi freaking mind trick on the Cuban government, making them do that. They, like the left in this country, believe that international trade is exploitative.
No, they fucking don't. Where have they ever said that? Where have they ever said, oh, we think international trade is exploitative, so thank you.
I'll give you one. Jason Unruh. That's where he contradicted himself when Obama was easing trade relations with Cuba, going around that he fears that, they're going to return Cuba back when it was like under Batista being like a neo-colony. Like, he was literally saying that when Obama was like taking baby steps to end the embargo. So you got one over there. Right in the back, you also got Kyle Kulinski, of course.
Thank you for putting the embargo on us so that we can't do international trade. No one's ever said that. Look at this face. Wow, this is. I'm going to screenshot this and make this an emoji on the stream. Perfect fucking frame. What he shows here, this headline: Cuba suspends tariffs on food and medicine that travelers bring to the island. That is customs duties.
Yeah, I paused it.
Yeah, and those are huge for a country that relies a lot on remittances.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, Cubans cannot access toothpaste, soap, to the point that in Cuba they actually brush their teeth with salt. I mean,
so if people are bringing stuff into Cuba or sending stuff to their families, and the Cuban government is heavily taxing it, why? Sources for what? The sources are under the description of my video, and if you want to go and pull up the differences in how live births are counted, that's under my video in response to Second Thought. So yeah, they have import taxes that they call people to pay. Remember, the average income in Cuba is insanely low. So those taxes really hurt. And again, also, you have a nation that is...
Yeah, and also, like in the United States, if you bring it, you only get taxed when you're bringing stuff in if that object or the thing you bring in it costs more than $500. Yeah.
Which is $500. Like, doctors in Cuba make like $70 a month, something like that. You can fact check me on that, because that might not be 100% accurate. But yeah, our imports our import tariffs are almost never freaking. I'm sorry, the import duties that you have to pay, like, would never be crossed by the Cubans because they make so much less money.
Yeah, I know like that serves as friend with BadEmpanada. They actually meet in person. I'm aware of that.
Of course.
On travelers, not on imports and exports, on things that people bring with them in their luggage. That is not a significant portion of food and medicine that is brought to Cuba at all. Not even the slightest. This is not nothing to do with trade. Nothing to do with trade at all. This is customs fees. Like, you enter the country and you have to pay a fee for stuff that you bring with you from outside of the country, right? These are not the same as tariffs on trade. In fact, with most of the Cuban government's main trading partners, especially on foodstuffs, they have no tariffs. Does this guy think that like most of the food in Cuba comes from people flying to Cuba with fucking luggage full of fucking Twinkies or something? No,
Yeah.
dude. Most of the food and medicine.
Can you Can you pause this?
Yes.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
So according to Reuters, and you can look this up, remittances to Cuba are believed to be around 2 billion to 3 billion annually, representing the third biggest source of dollars after the services industry and tourism. So it's the third biggest thing in their economy.
Yeah, that's.
Do you think it's that much? It's number 3.
Number 3.
In Cuba is imported by Cuban companies, most of which are government run. By far, 99.99999%. So this guy's idea that the Cuban government is impeding food and medicine imports itself through huge tariffs makes no fucking sense at all, because this barely changes anything. This is for people who are fucking coming to the island with shit in their luggage. It's not for normal trade. It's your own headline.
It's the third largest thing.
Explains how you're wrong. Right there. Travelers bring to the island. And I'll bring up the tariff schedule of Cuba with Vietnam. Vietnam is a big food importer to Cuba. It imports a lot of its rice, for example, which is a big deal. So Cuba has, for example, a trade agreement with Vietnam. Gives it 0% tariff.
Let me make this a little faster.
Yeah. So Vietnam, who they have an agreement with that's negotiated by the government, gets charged a 0% thing. Therefore, it's totally fine. Like, here's one nation that they have a special deal with.
Yeah.
So, like, imagine if the only trade agreement the United States had was NAFTA with America, Canada, and Mexico, which, by the way, the U.S. tariffs way more crap in NAFTA. But, like, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So imagine that was the only trade deal. And, like, we're talking about a problem with the United States and, like, and Europe, like, their trading problem. And some schmuck, as a reply, would say, well, in comparison to their thing, look at Canada. Everything's totally fine with Canada. It's like, yeah, they have a specific deal. Like, that's completely different.
Yeah, it's from one communist country to another. Hold on, let me
on most food imports. The only food imports which have tariffs are food that Cuba produces a huge amount of relatively to its consumption in its own country, okay? Most of the tariffs are 0%. And even the base tariff isn't even that high, like 10%, okay? 0%, 0%, 0%. Cuba literally has trade deals, okay, with its big food import partners, okay? And I absolutely guarantee you that without the embargo, Cuba would absolutely fucking love to make a trade deal on medicine and food with the USA, eliminating almost all tariffs on food and medicine products. Because Cuba is a tiny island nation that has to import a lot of these things because it just doesn't have the capacity. Most island nations in the Caribbean have to do this. So his idea that Cuba has some incredibly huge tariffs that are impeding itself from being able to import food and medicine because apparently it's a suicidal government that just loves people not have food and medicine.
Pause it.
Yeah.
When you have an average population with a low income, a 10% tariff is huge.
Yeah. Oh, hold on.
Like, isn't this guy supposed to be like, oh, I'm a progressive, blah, blah, blah. Like, taxes that are regressive are bad. Yeah, when you have to pay 10% more and you don't have a lot of money on products from places like the United States of America, that's a huge deal. That's a big deal. That has an impact. And yeah, Cuba would want to protect their food system. I would say, maybe Cuba wouldn't want to protect their food system if they opened up their markets. Yeah. If they weren't a communist country that was managing their if they weren't a communist country that was managing their agricultural system from the state, producing shortages like always happens when you have a centrally planned agricultural system and problems, they wouldn't have to like hyper manage it, and people wouldn't be complaining about food. Somebody's like 10% is a tithe. And Cuba historically is they're a food producing country.
Yes.
It's not like they have bad farmland.
Oh yeah, and that's a big thing. That's a big reason why a great example on why Cuba also fails is because ever since the Castro took power, he just changed the economy to center itself on exporting sugar to the Soviet Union. However, sugar, if you're in the Caribbean island, you got like once the Soviet Union is gone, right? You have to compete with the likes of Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico.
Yeah. And other nations like Costa Rica, other nations that can produce sugar.
Yeah, and this is exactly. You shouldn't have an economy that's centered on one product.
I mean, that's what the Venezuelans did. They bet everything on oil.
Hold on, let me
Make no sense whatsoever. His idea of a source is just like putting a fucking headline on the screen that doesn't say what he's saying it does.
Pause it.
Anyway,
Of those, pause it. Do you have my video?
My video? Yes.
Yeah, my video. Do you have that in the tab?
Of Kyle Kalinske? This one here?
No, the one that I'm responding to. The crystal. Yeah, there you go. Scroll down.
Yeah.
Under where it says sources. What is that?
Wait, I see. You're talking about the sources he's citing right here. The Cuba suspended.
Yeah, he says my idea of citing a source is putting a screenshot on screen. Under my video, under where it says sources, what do you see?
Links to the sources.
Label the links to the sources.
Yeah, right here.
Now,
you want me to click?
like,
Well, you want me to
no,
click?
you don't have to click them. I'm just saying they are there. Like, so my idea of sourcing is not what he says. He's just making shit up because he's too lazy to look in the description. You can go back to his video.
Hold on.
Import taxes until December 31st, 2021 in response to the protests. So it's not the US government doing a Mac Jedi freaking mind trick on the Cuban government making them do that. They, like the left...
no, the embargo is still there. You haven't addressed the embargo at fucking all. You're just like saying, what about these other things that are essentially totally inconsequential when compared to like Cuba not being able to trade on its own terms or
remittances
on
are
fair
1/3 of their economy, totally inconsequential.
terms of the US and a lot of other foreign companies as well due to the US embargo.
In this country believe that international trade is exploitative, and in order to prop
No, they
up their
don't.
own
No one
industries,
believes
they
that.
heavily tax
Jason Unruh does.
and restrict imports into their own country.
No one
Being
believes that
tricked into doing
international
that,
trade
that's
is by
something that the
default
Cuban government
exploitative. Jesus,
did
man.
themselves, and that is far more responsible for the shortages because the U.S. embargo on Cuba is a U.S. embargo on Cuba, but the restrictions on imports of food, medicine, and soaps and other hygiene supplies are restrictions that apply to anybody trying to bring supplies back into Cuba.
I just addressed that, and I already addressed before the fact that the US does factually impede imports from the US and other countries too. Again, you can see right here in the article that he's citing, brought to the island by travelers. How much food do you think is brought to the island by travelers, man? What the fuck is wrong with you?
So when Crystal and Kyle talk about the embargo as if it is the most important factor in what's going on in
I mean, he's saying that the embargo is less important to Cuba's food supply than people bringing suitcases of food into the island when they go there to visit their family or to do tourism.
Again,
buddy, I think you
pause
might.
it.
Yeah.
Remittances are the third largest additive to their economy. Number 3.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, you can look up what you're allowed to bring. In terms of medicine, you can bring 10 kilograms of medicine into Cuba at customs. 10 kilograms.
Hold on, let me
Be a
see.
little bit wrong there. I think actually you might be wrong by like a couple of million orders of magnitude. Also, this thing that they apparently believe, which they don't believe at all. Like everything that he's saying is just completely wrong. From the supposed facts that he's using to prove his points down to the beliefs that he's ascribing to his supposed opponent.
Those supplies from entering the nation. That's just a fact. But again, the simps for the communist regime don't want to tell you that because they support communism. I don't know how much more clear to make this. They are anti-American. And one of the worst things that I saw in Kyle Kalinski's video talking about this was Kyle referencing how the pro-government supporters in Cuba are even bigger, or at least as big, as the protests against the communist government of Cuba.
And by the way, Ben omits what? There are now pro-government protests that are just as big as the anti-government ones. But he omits that. So he's going to omit everything that doesn't fit his narrative. That's what Ben Shapiro does.
Now remember, the big premise of Kyle Kalinski's video where he's attacking Ben Shapiro for supposedly not disclosing that the American embargo on Cuba is causing all of these problems is the fact that Ben Shapiro is hiding information. You know what doesn't appear at all in Kyle Kalinski's video where he's sucking up to the Cuban dictatorship, to the Communist Party of Cuba? That the president of...
God, could this guy like be any more of like a just using like the terms that like cause the endorphins to go off in his audience, like the communist regime, the dictatorship. You know, that makes them be like, oh man, I love this guy. He's confirming what the U.S. media tells me.
Cuba ordered Communist Party members to get out into the streets and fight back against the protesters. So yeah, the side that is being called to action by the Cuban government is
Wait, Trump has supported protests and shit like that too.
Why
are the...
Pause it. A rally to support your candidate is different from telling your people to go out with the police and the military and put down the other people that you're violently suppressing.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are the pro-government protests invalid if the government says that people should go out and rally? Was Trump's support invalid because he held rallies, literal rallies?
Oh my god.
military side, the communists and the military, are coming out in force and attacking the people who are demanding a system that provides food.
Well, I mean, by the time he made this, these protests were over like literally a week.
We don't know for certain, like I pointed out, internet access has been restricted, and of course, like, I'm not saying that they're dying down a bit, because of course you're dealing with an authoritarian regime. But like I pointed out...
also, you can look up that in 2018, the Cuban government imposed more restrictions on imports and all that. Like, you know, like there were changes in policy that led to this. Obviously, the pandemic helped, you know, put this over there.
Earlier, so
medicine and all these other problems free of the communist dictatorship. So yeah, Kyle, really great job. Ben Shapiro was the one.
This guy's just one of the dumbest fuckers I've ever seen. Like it's really funny to me how like he's accusing others of being hypocritical with their beliefs, which he ascribes to them, which they obviously don't even hold. When he was a fucking Trump supporter, Trump
did he check?
Oh my god, he's the one being hypocritical. He's contradicting himself.
First of all, again, Kyle Kalinske, I'll name the video where he's talking about Jimmy Dore, the first one, and he says Cenk has had cringy takes. And one of those takes was that Cenk supports some of these free trade deals because he thinks free trade is good sometimes. Kyle Kalinske doesn't. That's why he called that a cringy take. These are the people that I'm responding to. And his whole thing about how I supported the Trump tariffs or whatever. Again, I talked about tariffs as in their role in terms of national security, actual national security. But I never pretended that they were good for the economy or was a zero-sum game. Or that the trade deficit, which just measures physical goods, is actually representative of a deficit between the United States and China because they pay money for intellectual property and licensing and all that doesn't get counted in the trade deficit. And had that actually been counted, you would see the impacts are far more balanced than you believe. So,
pro-government rallies all the time when he was the president. No, apparently
pro-government rallies. They're pro-Trump rallies. They're campaign rallies, you mook.
He's a Vegemite.
You're a communist. You're a socialist. That's what that means. Which this guy's obviously against. Like, funnily enough, I didn't even...
Wait, hold on. What you want to pause?
Yeah, the video. He's like, if you hold... First of all, it's not a pro-government rally. It's a Trump rally. Like a campaign rally. Like, that wouldn't be the same thing as a pro-government rally. It's pro-him. It's not pro-U.S. government. There's one party in the communist regime, in Cuba. That would be the Communist Party. And yeah, when there are protesters against them that are being violently suppressed, and then for a propaganda thing, he calls members of the party out into the streets so that they can distribute those images worldwide, that's a little bit different.
You need to make a straw man of him because these are his beliefs. He's doing...
Oh my god, like, they should make a straw man? I'm like, dude, we can make a drinking game out of your videos every time you straw man someone.
These are his beliefs. He believes that anytime a government official has a public meeting, then that they're a communist. That's what I said in the video. That's not a straw man. That's a steel man. Schmuck.
Exactly what he's saying that these other people are doing, except they're not actually doing it, and he is.
Leaving stuff out, even though you have left out all the key factors that have led to this crisis in Cuba. One of the left's absolute favorite phrases when referring to people on the right is they call something a mask-off moment. This Cuba situation is a mask-off moment for the left wing in the media and on the online media. They are supportive of communist dictatorships. If they see a problem in the world, they immediately look for a reason to blame the United States of America, and they will leave out every single crucial detail relating to...
You didn't prove any of that. Like, pretty much everything that you cited was just explicitly wrong.
...to the crises in order to highlight something that's basically irrelevant as long as they can tie it to...
The embargo is basically irrelevant. I mean, you cited travelers bringing in food and medicine as a huge cause of shortages. If travelers have to pay like 10% more.
Wait, say that again?
Remittances, again,
like third largest part of their economy. 10%, Mr. Like I'm on the left, doesn't understand how a 10% tax would affect poorer people, which the Cubans are poorer, more than richer people. Nice work though.
Let me see. Goes on another argument. He's repeating himself.
What's happening is because they wanted to take it to big pharma. People are protesting because of their relatively successful vaccine rollout. Is that why they're protesting? It might be something different. This guy is a complete NPC. He even looks like the NPC meme.
You look like, yet this guy over here looks like an Aussie version of Rasputin. So,
well, I mean, if you see that soy face meme with the scraggly beard, like that is him.
You mean like was that guy made a response? Yeah, step back. But he looks like step back with AIDS.
Yeah, but like this whole thing that he's talking about where he's like, oh, I'm not strawberry hip, these are his legitimate beliefs, blah blah blah.
Oh my god. John Rambo says no addressing the embargo, no addressing the economic consequences.
Well, you just say embargo and then that's fine.
It's
that's
a magic
all the problem.
Word.
Again, why is the U.S. obligated to trade with the communist country that has a better system?
Like, keep in mind, we were both against it, but at the same time, like, why is it our responsibility? Like, if it's like saying that if a person decides to boycott meat and some sort of butchery gets shut down and their workers get laid out, like, is the freaking vegans responsible for that? Are vegans horrible people for doing that? Or if someone decides to, like, say, if there was, like, this, an egg farm, that is starving their own chickens, and there's a big boycott, and that boycott became successful, the farm shuts down, all the workers get fired. Are the freaking people doing that boycott responsible? Are they freaking evil for doing that?
Yeah, listen, a 10% tariff on food, totally not a problem. Not a problem. That's fine. It's totally within normal range, but Cuba's a poor country.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the third poorest country behind Bolivia, which is also another socialist country, but unlike Cuba, Bolivia is a landlocked nation. And you also got Haiti.
Well, is Venezuela not somewhere in there because of their hyperinflation? I think that would have changed recently, right?
I have to double check this. The last time I checked, it was number 1 Haiti, number 2 Bolivia, and number 3 Cuba.
Cuba sucks because of communism, that socialism makes places worse, not better, is indicative of the denier rather than indicative.
That one also doesn't make any sense. Let's just look at the Cuba on the HDI index again. Cuba punches far above its weight in quality of life. So let's look at some capitalist countries. Haiti, Honduras, Guatemala,
Wait, did he say Haiti?
Wait, what? Haiti? Wait, hold on. Let me go back. I think
its weight in quality of life. So let's look at some capitalist countries. Haiti, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. That didn't seem to...
Haiti. Oh my god.
So he plays this game where everything that's not explicitly everything that's not explicitly a communist nation, like they don't call themselves a socialist or communist nation, therefore they're a capitalist nation. Yeah, we all know about the free market capitalism in fucking Haiti. They're just killing it with the capitalism.
Yeah, exactly.
They're nailing it.
Oh, he tries to ignore Nicaragua too.
Is he doing very good?
I like that terrible Hati. You know when like stupid people that are super progressive try to impress you by pronouncing something like more ethnic? That's what that was. Hati.
Hati. Dude, have you seen his freaking videos where he tries to speak Spanish and he sounds absolutely horrible?
Hati.
Neighbors, Belize, Bolivia, Paraguay, the Dominican Republic.
Wait, Bolivia. Wait, did you say Bolivia?
Yep.
Oh my god. You said Bolivia is a capitalist country. Are you kidding me?
Like I said, unless they literally have a socialist party that's like the sole party in there, he's not counting them, Also, again, Cuba was I think the wealthiest country in Caribbean, Latin America
Yeah.
before their revolution. Like again, pre-revolution, they had a better healthcare system than France.
Republic, Ecuador, Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Mexico. These are all explicitly capitalist countries. Under Cuba,
Wait, what?
almost
These are all
Brazil, Colombia,
explicitly
Peru,
capitalist
Mexico.
countries,
These are
the
all
capitalist
explicitly
paradise of
capitalist.
Haiti.
Did he just highlight
Pause it.
Venezuela and Bolivia?
Did he say Venezuela?
Wait, hold on.
The Dominican Republic, Ecuador.
Dominican Republic. He mentioned Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic is a democratic socialist state. The president is a democratic socialist. Why he's bringing up Dominican Republic?
Brazil,
Can you play
Colombia,
Yeah, wait, what? What you want me to
Peru,
play?
Mexico. These are all explicitly capitalist countries. Under Cuba, on this relatively
I want to
decent
know if he
measure
said
of
Venezuela.
He didn't say Venezuela, but he did mention Dominican Republic, which is also
Alright.
another socialist country.
standard of living. Okay, so how is Cuba? an
Pause
exa-
it.
Yeah, what?
Go look up any of those nations on the Economic Freedom Index.
Yeah.
And by the way, the DR I'm sure is freer than the in terms of economically
Yeah.
than the Haitians, which is why they're better than the Haitians.
Yes. I mean, I actually been to DR, and although it's still very poor, due to the fact that they're like economically like socialists in some sense, but I've been to their hospitals and they're way better than what you see in freaking Cuba.
Example of the failure of socialism because it's having a temporary crisis. Capitalism fails every fucking 5 to 10 years. These people like they look at this like,
Capitalism fails every 5 to 10 years.
temporary economic crisis in Cuba, which is happening due to the pandemic, and also obviously partly due to the embargo. And he's just like, oh, this means that Cuba sucks. Cuba is failing. Socialism sucks. But if you look at the fucking ranks of quality of life in comparison, Cuba is in the top half.
Wait, quality of life. That's the most vaguest shit ever.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not nebulous rankings that rely on data supplied by the country. I'm sure that's fine.
Quality of life, what they're measuring that from.
Don't worry about it.
In Latin America, and many countries with economic systems that this guy would approve of are doing worse than it. In some cases,
if you pause this right quick. So if you look at like the happiest nations in the world, what you'll find is that the happiest nations in the world aren't like Scandinavia or in Europe or even the United States. They're places that are like relatively free with good weather. And then Scandinavia and all these places with high standards of living and all that. So people like prefer weather over any of that in those happiness things. But yeah, quality of life, got it. 100%, they got it.
Far worse than it. So if Cuba is an example of the failure of socialism, it's a pretty fucking successful failure, buddy. The narrative of that has
like
an
I
economic
said,
crisis.
The guy. But the whole point of this video is that these lefties simp for Cuba, and look what he's doing right now, quoting directly from the Cuban government, sugging them off. He's saying Haiti, the country of Haiti, the capitalist paradise of Haiti, doesn't compare. You know, absolutely absurd. Also, tenants in the chat.
Tenants? Wait, hold on. Let me see the voice chat.
Cuba's second economic crisis in about 30 years, okay? That's a whole lot fewer economic crises
They've never had
in
an
the US
economic
in that same
crisis.
time frame. So if having a temporary economic crisis is evidence of the failure of socialism, what are the far more numerous economic crises in the US and in many other capitalist, so-called capitalist countries? Are they indicative of failures of their system, or does it only apply to Cuba? Fair question, I think, that this guy obviously kind of answered.
Indicative of reality. But hey, those are just my thoughts, and they happen to be 100% accurate and factually
I got a
based.
question.
Yeah.
What's higher, the median income in Cuba or the poverty rate in the United States of America?
Wait, say that? You want me to search it up? Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
What want me to say that again?
What's higher, the median income in Cuba or the poverty rate in the United States? Like the line where you're poor, considered poor in the United States.
Hold on. All right. The medium income ranges from 409 convertible 400 convertible Cuban pesos. Hold on. It's around 17 to 30 US dollars per month. 17
month.
to 30. And
and the poverty rate for an individual in the United States of America is about $12,000 a year. For an individual, not for a household. So I guess Cuba is pretty successful. That the average American, a minimum wage worker in America, works less than a day to make more than what a doctor in Cuba makes in a month.
Yeah, they have to take taxi drivers.
Total schmuck. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments.
They happen to be
Isn't
100%
trading
accurate and
of
factually
commerce?
based. Let's
What
look
are
at
you talking about? How did you get this guy in your thing?
Wait, what? What this? Do you mean you talk about Rambo?
Yeah.
I don't know. Hold on. Let me see this guy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, yeah, of course there's like an accounting for expenses and a 1-to-1 comparison. But when the median is $30 US compared to 12,000 for the poverty rate in the United States, come on.
Yeah. Wait, hold on.
Like, it's not comparable. Like, you're considered poor in the world if you live on less than $1 in a day. That's global poverty. And he just said the median household income is $25 to $30, which honestly I thought was low. I would assume that their official numbers have to be higher than that.
Yeah. Hold on. I think that's around the end of the video. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a quick break, and we could probably talk about Cuomo. Because I have to take my dog outside.
It's already 2 hours.
Holy shit! 2 hours. Let me fact check this.
Yeah, that's why I said don't go with a 45-minute video. It's super boring. And yes, I changed my microphone, and people can complain, but I'm stretching my legs. And it's pretty long. We could just wrap it here, and then, another time we could talk about Cuomo.
All right, then. It's already long enough. I might try to download the stream and edit it to remove all the embarrassing parts. So, anyway,
what I want to do is private the stream, like after it goes off, so it can't be downloaded. Don't unlist it if you're trying to edit it.
Okay. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna post the link for my Discord in the description, and I'm gonna end the stream here. But I'm gonna stay in the voice chat in case people want to join my Discord and talk to me in person.
Okay.
All right.
You mean over Discord, not in person?
Sorry, Discord. Hold on.
All right. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm out of here.
All right. See ya. All right. Bye, Sean. What I'm gonna do is post the Discord. I'm gonna put the outro for the video, and while doing that, I'm gonna post the link to the Discord in the description of this video. All right, guys.
BadEmpanada guy?